Hello again, a second video about online learning and getting yourself set up on there. In this short video I just want to talk about how the learner learns in an online environment, or how they tend to learn, and what we can do maybe to mitigate that or to help it indeed. Also the expectations of the teachers and in fact of the management in the way that learners learn. The first thing we have to think, of course, is that online learning is not a classroom, it's not a physical environment. It seems a bit obvious to state that, but I think it tends to get forgotten. I think with this current crisis, some managers seem to expect that students are going to be in the same temporal space for the whole time that they'd normally be in school, i.e. from 9 till 3 o'clock. And that just isn't going to happen, obviously. As I said in the earlier video, it depends what things, what equipment students have available to them and when they can use it, and if they've got good online resources or good online capability and broadband and so forth. What happens with online learning is that it tends to be outcome orientated rather than task oriented. That's not always the case, but that's generally how it ends up being. And that's largely because of how materials are organised and how instructions are given. And why is that? Well, it's because online learning is what we call asynchronous learning rather than synchronous learning. What does that mean? Well, synchronous learning is what happens in the classroom. Everyone in the same place at the same time learning the same thing. And what you might have in the class is you have the more difficult tasks to do for the faster learners, with a bit more work via, for example, teaching assistants for the slower learners. Nevertheless, they're learning in the same place at the same time. With online learning, generally what happens is we get this asynchronous environment. So students can be learning by themselves, reading a book, doing homework and so forth, or they might be doing some partially synchronous work with another person or a small group. What generally doesn't happen is that everybody is in the same place at the same time. And when it comes to setting up your online learning environment, first of all, don't expect that to happen. It can occur eventually if you are able to agree a set time, but don't expect it to happen for the time being. Let's focus on the asynchronous work initially. What we don't want to do, however, is go into workbook mode, because that is a classic example of asynchronous learning, but it's very easy to put all your materials online and have them work through a workbook. Now, some students, that's fine. They are very, very happy doing with that. But others, it doesn't work. Their intrinsic motivation goes down. And why is that? Well, it's simply because that learning is a societal thing. We learn as a community. We learn as a group. And some students can work very well by themselves, work individually, and are successful doing that. But there are many, many others who need that support and help, not only from the teacher, but also from their own peer group as well. Now, the great thing with learning online is it fosters autonomy. And autonomous learners is something that is the holy grail of management and teachers, but for very different reasons. Managers want that because they think, great, autonomous learners, that means we have to pay fewer teachers to teach. Just give them the materials and away they go. That's the management perspective. The teaching perspective is, an autonomous learner, they will be able to forge through life fantastically after this because they can teach themselves anything. But the truth of the matter is, teachers, once you give autonomy to learners, get a bit uncomfortable, a bit worried about it, because it means relinquishing a degree of control. And let's face it, as teachers, we like to manage things, even if it's not very well, but there we go. So anyway, that is the big problem we have with it there. Giving autonomy there, I'll start again. Giving autonomy to learners, it involves a degree of trust from you as the teacher and from them and to them as learners. The students have to be able to trust your judgment on that. That's not always an easy case with younger learners or with teenagers. With adults who've grown up in a more traditional learning system, they also might fight against it as well. So what we need to do to be able to foster that autonomy and trust here in an online environment where students may be left to their own devices for quite a long time is think about how we deliver the materials and, crucially, how we deliver the instructions. For example, we might say that something is a time-bound task. So giving the instructions carefully and clearly on that, saying, okay, I want you to look at, I don't know, this page from this PDF at 9 o'clock, read it through, then at 9:30 contact your friend, discuss it, and then produce whatever material you might want from there, or using breakout rooms, which we'll come to in another video. So thinking very carefully about your instructions and about how you want to frame your materials. This, of course, leads us again to looking at our scheme of work and thinking which materials will work particularly well online, and then how we exploit our materials and then instruct our students to be able to look at them. You'll find that when you set up an online environment, first of all, you will need to be very careful and very clear with your instructions, but that over time the students will become increasingly autonomous and understand implicitly what the instructions should be. In the next session, I will deal with what type of platform will you use. Oh, that's terrible grammar. I'll deal in the next session about with which... Right, I'm tired. I've had a long cycle ride, excuse me. I will deal with which platform you should use to deliver online learning, whether it should be social media, certain classroom-oriented apps, or fully fledged virtual learning environments. Thank you.